Mike, how you doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
I am looking forward to it. You've got quite the story, and you've built yourself quite the reputation with your podcast and your community. And I got to thank our mutual friend Kyle for dropping the introduction. And it sounds like I think he had reached out because of what you're actually doing now after some of your transitions. But let's take it back. For my listeners that might not be familiar with some of the things that you've done, like honestly, Mike, how did you start to become an entrepreneur? I know it kind of dates all the way back, but was it an accident? How did you jump into it? What let you into this whole world?
Yeah, I mean, these life story conversations get harder and longer because as you get older, and I'm getting older,
more and more stuff compounds.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of it is your upbringing and the surroundings. So, I mean, my dad was and is an entrepreneur. I mean, I actually can't remember a time ever my dad had. I know he had jobs before I was born, or maybe before I can remember, but not since I can remember. He was always doing something. He was always in some sort of construction. So he had like a woodworking shop and built houses. And now his current phase, the current business he's doing is more like a general contractor and builds whole custom homes or custom wineries and things of that nature. So I was kind of around it through osmosis as a kid. I think some of it might be genetic. Maybe it's partly from how I was raised. Partially, I wasn't a very good student, and I knew I wasn't going to college and was going to have to figure out a way somehow to make money. So I think there was a part of all those influences that led me into being an entrepreneur. And there's been some times in my life where I was an entrepreneur. I went and worked for a company for a few years, and looking at it as a body of work, I'm definitely an entrepreneur at heart, and couldn't imagine ever working for somebody else again.
Professionally unemployable. You ever heard that term?
Pretty much, yeah.
So you've got a pretty cool background, man. Back in the early days of the pokers and the poker phase, and I remember back in the day, like the craze that was going on. Can you give the audience that might not be familiar with your background, because I think you and I've got probably a Venn diagram of some of my listeners. I've got a lot of the online community and the Chris Yates and the Quiet Light worlds and stuff like that, but then also people that are completely unfamiliar with what Ecom Crew is and what you do and some of the cool things that you've done in the background or in your background. So why don't you give us a little bit of an overview of that, because I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So hello to the Chris Yates and Joe Valley crowd out there that's listening. But yeah, I mean, so during the time that I was, because you asked about the poker thing specifically. So during the time that I had a full-time job, I was starting to get a little bit antsy, without a doubt. I mean, it was about 7 years into this job. They were actually a client of mine that hired me and convinced me to come work for them. But poker was this big thing in 2003. I mean, if you can remember back that far, most guys were really into playing poker, and I was not alone in that. I mean, I was going to casinos to play. I had a home poker tournament that I did at my house once a week that had ballooned up to like 45 people coming to it at one point. It was crazy. There was no room in the neighborhood to park all the cars. And I was also playing online poker, and just through happenstance of being bored, because like poker is definitely not a fast-paced game, I was just clicking around on Party Poker's website and saw the word affiliates and clicked on it. And that night, a business was born when I realized like how much you can make from affiliate marketing. And from the day that I saw that page to the day I quit my job was about 6 months. And the rest is kind of history, but it was a crazy time. And I doubt it'll ever be repeated again in my lifetime in terms of the amount of money that we made and how quickly it all happened and how easy it happened.
I was going to say I mean, what was even the compliance like as money is flying all over and the regulators don't even really know what to do with it at that point? I mean, it must have been ridiculous.
For us, it was relatively simple because we were affiliates. So we weren't running an online poker room. So the compliance part for us was to pay our taxes, which we did. I mean, we were receiving money on our account, and I've always been just really good about making sure we're paying our taxes and those types of things. And so for us, it was pretty simple. I mean, it was actually a pretty simple business to run. Looking back at it, comparing that to what we do now in e-commerce, it seems so complicated back in the day, but now I realize like how easy and how good we had it. And it was an all cash business. There was never cash flow problems. We grew like wildfire, and it was a fun time.
So then, what was what led you as you jumped in? Because I know you've been back and forth into a bunch of different buying and selling domains, and then also the most recent transaction. But like, what led you into what was the first venture that you ended up purchasing, and like how did you ended up saying, okay, like this is me on my own? Did you save up a bunch of money? Did you partner with someone to begin with? What was the first leap?
Yeah. So when I got out of online poker, which was at the end of 2010, we sold off a part of our business. So it was a cash infusion then. And then we also, I decided back in the summer of that year that it kind of give notice to my partners and the people I was working with there that I wanted to be out. So I gave up some equity and put in a CEO there and and made it be known that I was completely walking away, that I didn't want to hear about anything for any reason, anytime, except for a quarterly board meeting that I agreed to be on 1 hour a quarter. So, I mean, I was basically just wipe my hands, absolve myself from that business, and kind of basically semi-retired for a couple of years.
What was the
And
reasoning behind that, Mike? I mean, what led up to the point that drastic of a cutoff? Was there any reasoning or triggering event?
oh yeah, there was definitely a few things. First of all, I felt like it was a business that was built on quicksand, and it was just so disheartening to me to just constantly be working really, really hard and always going backwards. Uh, Even though we were still making good money, it just you mentioned regulatory things. Even though the regulatory things didn't affect us directly, they indirectly affected us because the people we
Mhm.
were promoting were having all these problems. And so, there was the day that they passed the UIGA, which is the Unlawful Gaming Enforcement Act in 2006. And so, like half the poker rooms pulled out of the United States, and
Mhm.
then NetTeller shut down was another big day. And then there was a day where the other rooms that were left in the US some of them got shut down. And it was just like one hit after another of you finally build the business back up to so it's doing well again, and then some other thing that's out of your control affects you. And it was at a point where I just had enough of that. Being in that environment, it was just really frustrating for me. But probably the bigger factor over anything else was that I honestly just didn't like the people in the industry. I mean, they were, if you can think of what stereotypes would be of people like in the gambling industry,
Yeah.
a lot of times stereotypes exist for a reason, and it just
It's a
isn't my
generalization for a
personality.
reason.
Yeah, exactly. And I had enough of being around these types of people. It just was something that I couldn't fit into. It was hard kind of trying to pretend to be their friend any longer. And I just really didn't want anything to do with it anymore. And it was unfortunate because I did like what I was doing to a certain extent. I mean, I still love poker. I mean, I think it's a fun game, but I had just had enough, and I was kind of burned out. I mean, it was also a burnout factor as well. I mean, I was working 12 to 14 hours a day for many, many years. It was, the business was growing so quickly. Every day was like getting hit with a fire hose. And I was younger. I mean, I was in my 20s at the time, or in my 30s, early 30s. And, it's a lot easier to do that when you're younger. But at some point, even as a younger guy, it wore on me. And I was just like, you know what, I've had enough. I think that now is the time to walk away. And I did it in a way that was fair to everyone involved, and gave plenty of notice to everybody that was still in the company, that still had a stake in it. And for me, it was great because when I walked away, it was still a passive income stream, and that's something that we lived off of for the next many years, and we're able to use that as a transition into the next phase of our life, which ended up being e-commerce.
So we're gonna go down that journey, but before we continue down that, I'm just curious. How did you guys because you talk about the passive income stream, and there's a lot of people that aren't totally familiar with because in passive in the e-commerce, there's a lot of different ways of people having passive websites or online companies, but what was the structure? How did you guys value it? How did you get that passive income? Was it an earn note? Was it a promissory note? I'm just from the technical perspective, like how did you get that, and then how did you and all your partners come up with what was fair and reasonable and for a price and the terms for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually pretty simple. I was the majority owner at the time. We had some minority partners that were involved in the business. And I threw out an equity chunk that I thought was fair to kind of distribute back around the people that were going to stay, and then I would keep what the remaining equity that which was about 40%, and that would be just distributions. So
Got it.
for every 100K that the business generated in profit, I got 40K of it, and that became the passive income stream for me. But every month or every year over year, it was a declining business, and I knew that. I mean, it wasn't the fault of people that were left behind to run it. It was just the nature
Nature
of
of the
the business
industry.
that we had. So I
Yep.
mean, I knew that it was a clock on that, and so we treated that way from day one, and didn't have any expectations that it would go on forever. And eventually, but at the end result ended up happening actually last year. It got to a point where the money that it was throwing off wasn't enough to keep the people that were running it interested. So we then just sold our shares to them for six figures and walked away.
And that just happened last year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what is the, kind of the layer on top of that when you use this, the passive income to get into e-commerce? So, what did you learn in the online world of affiliates and as you were working in that world? And, what was the journey like into e-commerce and identifying what you want to do next? Because, and there's a couple of different next stages, I think, in your whole journey. And I think, what was the process that you went through to mentally figure out what you wanted and how you wanted to get into it? And what was that next venture?
Yeah. So there was actually, I think there's two questions there. First was, what did I learn in affiliate marketing? And so I think the biggest lessons I took away, which I think are really important, that I took away in affiliate marketing were just the evolution of business. So there's this cycle of in affiliate marketing of when the companies that you're working with need you more than you need them, right? They're young, budding companies that are looking for attention. You have the attention. They're willing to pay you anything for it. And or they're in a very hyper-competitive industry and they'll make horribly bad decisions to get the transaction over the other guy because they want to become the biggest. Mm-hmm. And eventually that whole scenario will flip-flop, right? So where they no longer need you, like you need them way more because like they're your source of income and they're big enough now that they can basically put their thumb on you and do anything to you that they want, including just stop paying you. And I thought that was a really important lesson to learn at that time. And, I wasn't even really, a lot of people in the industry were really bitter about it. But my feeling always was that, I'm an independent contractor, that they're paying me to do a job. And when they no longer want to pay me to do it, so be it. And so I took a little bit different attitude towards it. The only thing that I was a little bit bitter about was there was a couple of poker rooms that paid us lifetime revenue share and they cut that off, which I thought was pretty dirty because
that's not lifetime.
Lifetime is no longer lifetime.
Right.
But again, it's just a lesson in where you stand on the totem pole and just being cognizant of that. And that was definitely an important lesson that I've taken into the next phase of business.
So, I know I apologize for asking two questions at once. I tend to kind of spitfire sometimes.
Yeah, no worries.
But, as you, which is great because I think some of those lessons, as as we'll shed those into what you're doing now and the different ventures that you've done. But like, I think as you said, you kind of quote unquote semi-retired. How did you process that? Especially at a younger age, and then going through that evolution. I think it's just a challenging thing that typically a lot of people have an issue with, or and different types of an issue, I should say. Sometimes it's a longer, sometimes it's jump right in. But how did you personally deal with it?
So we bought an RV and went. It just went out on the road and went to enjoy life. And I thought it was going to be like this glamorous, most amazing thing in the world. But pretty quickly, I got bored, and I wouldn't say that I was depressed because I wasn't depressed, but I was definitely kind of lost in the world in some way because I feel like I've talked a lot about this. Actually, you mentioned Sherry earlier, who was on your podcast, and I've equated entrepreneurship to be, at least in the way that it affects me, like a disease as much as alcoholism or heroin addiction or something, where it's just like you need it like so badly, and it's the way that you identify yourself. And without that in my life, it was cool for a while, like for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, something in that range. But pretty quickly, I was just like my head was bouncing all over the place.
What were you reading a bunch, or did you actually take some time off, or like?
I did take time off, like legitimately, because I was burned out, and it took about, like I said, somewhere between 3 and 6 months of being out on the road in the RV. At first, it was amazing. I'd go out on hikes and walks and just go do touristy crap and not think about anything except what I was going to go do for the day. And it was, go out to the beach with a dog or whatever the hell it was. It was like this amazing, glamorous thing. And then slowly but surely, like during those times of going out for a hike, where you have like all this quiet time or whatever other things I was doing, there was a lot of quiet time, which, in retrospect, I do miss again now. But in my head would start getting filled with all these other thoughts of the pressure of I need to go do something else. I need to go, make more money and go, even though we were in a great spot and didn't need to do anything at that point. Realistically, I couldn't help it. Like I was just like an addict getting back into something else. It was like the magnet of the North Pole pulling me that way, or a moth to a flame, or whatever it is. It was there, and I couldn't help it. And that's kind of,
Yeah. Were you traveling with family, or was it just?
I was with my wife. Yeah, my wife and our dog. Yeah.
Was she? How was she dealing with this as you were going through this? I mean, I've my wife's gone through her own challenges being married to me and through the journeys. I mean, was she supportive? Was she helping? Was she like where was her mindset in the spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, when we first got out on the road, she was like just thrilled as well. The last business, as I kind of mentioned, was just kind of hard on us as well. I mean, it was great to have time together, and she was supportive. I think at first of the stuff I was getting into, because there was a lot of online passive type stuff, and we'll talk about just kind of how the journey got into e-commerce. I think where I lost her on the journey was when we got another office in a warehouse and got stuck back in this life again.
Hmm.
And I didn't really think, I didn't even see it coming. Like it happened, and I did it. I made all these decisions to go do it and didn't even realize the repercussions, because we were like caught back in this whirlwind again of entrepreneurship. And I think a successful entrepreneur doesn't make any excuses or sacrifices for themselves or their family, and it's all about the business. And we definitely got back into that cycle again for the last few years, and we're working on getting back on the other side of that again. But that definitely happened again, without a doubt. And I definitely think that she was not happy about that when it got to that level again.
So let's go, which I appreciate you, and I want to kind of, I mean, to be able to have the interesting roller coaster. And there's a book I just got done reading called The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster, which if you haven't read, pretty entertaining.
I'm gonna go check. It's probably the story of my life, but I definitely want to go read it.
Yeah, it's like I was listening to it and I was like, okay, so I'm not crazy, but maybe I'm crazy and everybody else is crazy too.
Yeah.
But honestly, Mike, as you're going through that, so then you've spent some time reflecting, and you're missing the itch. Well, so explain how, what was the draw towards e-commerce, and what were the different spaces that you like to play, that you enjoyed, and then what was the lead all the way up until, like you said, you opened up bigger facilities.
Yeah. So what happened when we were in the RV, and the thing that kind of got me tinkering back with business again, because I had this affiliate marketing background and SEO background, I had identified just the value of premium domain names, and I was doing a lot of investing in that. I bought graphicdesign.com, wordpressthemes.com, onlinedegree.com, and one of the ones I had purchased as well was treadmill.com. And there's but dozens of these names that I had bought, but treadmill.com was one of the ones I had bought. And what I was doing with lots of these sites, website hosting was one of the ones that I ended up selling. I was developing them, turning them into affiliate sites, but doing it in a non-poker niche, because I felt like I wanted to do it in a niche that was quote unquote legitimate, that wouldn't get shut down again. And I was actually out on one of these hikes that I was talking. I'm always been into hiking. I was out on a hike, and we had been running treadmill.com at this point for a few months as an affiliate site. And I was like, you know what? I need to be honest with myself about what I'm doing here. I feel like realistically, I'm kind of like a bottom feeder on society as an affiliate in this capacity, because these sites I'm building aren't really adding any value to anybody. Like they're just a way for me to capture traffic from unsuspecting people that are doing searches on the internet and don't know any better, and click through my links and end up buying some piece of equipment that I'm recommending because I'm getting paid. And when I started realizing that and just being honest with myself to that, and I'm not begrudging anybody for doing that and that run that kind of business. I was just at a point in my life where I thought I could do better. And I wasn't at a point where I needed to make money just to survive, to put money on the table or food on the table, but I wanted to do it in a different way. And that's actually how we got into e-commerce, because I was just like, you know what, I'm going to convert treadmill.com into an e-commerce property and actually sell equipment to people directly and provide really good customer service and a good shopping experience and good content, and be legitimately good content about these pieces of equipment, and go about it that way, to the point where I think that it adds value to the world, that I'm actually providing a better experience for people that come there, rather than just redirecting them somewhere else and making money because I'm in the right place. And literally, that was the conversation I had with myself on a hike. I remember exactly where it was. And within a month, we were on a mission to turn treadmill.com into an e-commerce property.
Super cool, man. Like, it's refreshing to hear you say that, because I think there's a lot of people, because I work with a lot of traditional businesses that are getting into e-commerce, right? And, or, manufacturer. I was with a client this morning that's a manufacturer that's trying to figure out, as this work, because they're selling through independent sales reps. So their business model is, a little bit different, a lot different than that. And they're watching the world change and they're trying to figure this out. And I hear a lot of the stories of that, them getting hijacked, customers getting hijacked, and then like literally trying to resell the leads to these people that were originally going to them. So it's an interesting, and what Mike went through your head. Like, was there an experience where you kind of said, what's the point? I mean, what led you? I mean, I think the hike obviously was a great catalyst in the environment for that, but was there something in the business that like just triggered that? Or
there was not in that business, but previously what had happened, because I was doing affiliate stuff for so long, just getting hit with things like a penguin or panda penalty, where you like lose all your rankings because you're just have thin or crappy content. That had happened by this point. That was years in the past, but I was basically thinking about the way that the conversation in my head started, and I still, again, it's weird how I can't remember what I did yesterday, but some things you remember very well, and this I remember very well. I was just thinking in terms of what is it that Google really wants, like in terms of what's going to rank on their platform, and instead of constantly hustling and thinking and playing these games of like what works today and reading all the forms of the black hat tactics that are working right now. What's like a better way to build a business where I'm not having to constantly go through the stress of all this and just build like a legitimate business that Google wants to rank? Like at the end of the day, like maybe I don't rank number one to start with, but eventually I do, because they'll figure it out, and just wait for them to figure it out. And I'll be there when they do. And to me, like I realized at that moment that affiliate marketing was not the way to do that. Like that was like dawned on me that what they don't want ranking there are people like me. Like I'm the problem, and then I started thinking like, well, I really am a problem. It wasn't that I'm a problem for Google, but I'm kind of a problem. The way that I was going about making money, I just didn't feel good about it in that moment. In terms of, it wasn't unethical. Like I don't think that, again, there's probably people listening that have affiliate businesses like this, and I don't begrudge them in any way. But I thought it was kind of a combination of a long-term business decision and just the way that I felt about myself in that moment in time. And that was kind of the combination that happened then.
Well, it's kind of cool, man. Like, I don't, you ever heard of the book Conscious Capitalism?
I haven't. No.
A really interesting book, and I'll put a link in for the listeners. But it's pretty much just like, if you do good for the world, and like once you become aware of things, you're just constantly always doing good, and you will succeed. I mean, it's definitely the long-term play. But
that is the way that we've run our businesses since that day. And that was in, that was in 2012. So it's been 7 years. And, I can wholeheartedly say, I've built better businesses. I feel better about what I'm doing. Like I enjoy what I'm doing more. I don't stress about, having to worry about the next tactic or whatever it is that I'm having to plan for. And in fact, I don't even worry about the money part of it. It just comes. Like you don't have to worry about it. We've taken this exact approach with Ecom Crew. We put out something like 170 episodes before we even tried making any money. It was all about just give value first, and it'll come at some point, and it has. It's a really successful business now, but we make money by legitimately improving people's lives. Like, and that's just a way better position to be in. If you have your option of how to make money, I think anybody listening would rather do it that way. And at some point you got to, if you're young and don't have any money in the bank and you need to put your next meal on the table, you're going to do whatever you have to do to make money. And I respect that, because I came from that environment. But at some point it was just like, okay, what can I do to just, now that I don't have to think in that way any longer, what can I do to do better? And that was kind of the evolution of it. And it wasn't, it just kind of happened the way that I just laid out. It wasn't, like I woke up one morning and it was just like, I need to be a better person or anything. It just, it was a bunch of life experiences that kind of came together, and it was just an aha moment.
So I mean, how good does that feel now that you run these businesses that way?
It
How's
feels
that?
amazing. I mean, I was actually recording another podcast today talking about this exact thing. I mean, it's been the most gratifying thing in my life. I mean, we've been able to do, and I've also realized that, the effect that I have by doing this, the ripple effect and the multiplier effect is substantial because, with the Ecom Crew stuff, and we help other businesses legitimately improve their business or get themselves out of a bad situation. There's been several businesses that were about to go bankrupt or just heading down the wrong path, and we've been able to help them. So the repercussions and the ripple effect of helping them, and them being able to quit their job or fix their business or avoid bankruptcy or whatever the things that come out of it, amplifies what I can provide. And it feels amazing, like, because it's a personal connection relationship, and it isn't just a name or a number on a piece of paper, and it feels amazing. Like, and it's why we're doing more and more. I'm spending more and more of my time doing those things because it's infectious, and having more fun doing that than anything else I've ever done in my life.
Because it's interesting. Like I've had different guests on that have maybe a later stage and they're done with business because they sell, and then they're like, now what? And then they're like, going and sitting on a charity board is not really fulfilling. So they get into business, and then they realize that business is the number one way to impact people's lives, better than government, better than charity. So it's interesting how people are starting to realize that. I don't know if that's kind of what the conscious capitalism talks about, the double bottom line, being able to like literally just you treat all your stakeholders amazing, and that's better than giving back to charity and more fulfilling too.
Because, like, I mean, I thought through what I would have to do, like how much money I would have to earn for my business to be able to make a difference by donating that money that I made from the business to a charity. And then what that charity does with it, which is questionable with a lot of charities, right?
Right.
Versus taking that same amount of time. And yes, I don't produce the same numbers in terms of money because I'm spending my time helping others, but what they can, because like you're helping high functioning people, that are highly motivated, that they're already entrepreneurs, they're already, but they're at a different part of their journey where they just didn't know any better, and they got themselves in a bad situation, or they're trying to quit their jobs and get to be in a better situation. And so if they're already motivated to do all that, if you can help them, and then again the multiplier effect of that, I mean, it's pretty incredible versus just donating some money to somebody and hoping that they do good with it. And again, not begrudging people who donate money to charity, and there's certainly lots of good charities that do lots of good in the world. I'm not trying to.
It's all leverage.
It's all leverage.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to. And that's just, again, I feel like I have a talent that I need to take advantage of when it comes to that. And I get the personal satisfaction out of it and seeing what they've done versus, again, just writing a check. And I have no idea like how I've helped that child in Africa. Like I'm never going to see him, kind of thing.
Yep.
It's cognitive dissonance versus a real impact.
So one, because we got some, half the listeners I think are coming from, up and down the street, business to business services or manufacturing or whatever it is. And they're, one of my episodes recently was about the merging of online and offline. Really cool episode. So some people might not be familiar with Ecom Crew. So even though you've got, quite the name out there of what you've been doing, and even some of your other outside ventures, can you kind of give the listeners a little bit of an overview of what are, so you got treadmill.com, what are the e-commerce companies that you're continuously in and or have exited, and then what is the kind of the mission behind Ecom Crew, and what how are you actually helping these people?
Yeah, that's a long conversation, so let's take off. But I got it.
So treadmill.com, done it before, but however you feel like it'll be successful.
No worries. Yeah, I love talking about this stuff actually. So it's cool that you asked that question. So treadmill.com we exited in 2015. The reason we got out of it is, you can kind of just tell, like, I'm a people person by doing this, and we just weren't able to make our customers happy. It's a miserable business of shipping big, heavy pieces of equipment that we were drop shipping. Customers were not happy when deliveries were late, damaged. They didn't know how to put them together, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was a tough business that in terms of providing happiness to the world, when I wasn't able to do that. So we sold that, and we had one employee at the time, and he was awesome. And I did not want to let him go. I mean, when you're in entrepreneurship and you come across a great employee, you know how that can change your life and your business.
So true.
Oh, I mean, it was that good. And so I went and bought another business. I bought another business called icedrops.com, and I found it on BizBuySell. I flew up to Michigan and packed it all in the truck and flew back home and had the truck drive meet me in California when I got back. and I was in the ice wraps business, and I did it because of this guy that we had. I mean, and he ended up eventually leaving because his wife went back to work, and he wanted to be a stay-at-home dad, and so that was a pretty cool story for him to be able to do that. But while I was fixing and re-engineering ice wraps to like take it from this failure, because I bought a company that basically was about to go bankrupt, and improving it, and I was also had got into another community called e-commerce fuel at the time, and what I thought I was doing was just what everyone else was doing. Like it was just so obvious to me. But what I realized is that what I was doing was revolutionary to most e-commerce owners, because I was coming at it from a total technical standpoint. Like my background was in online marketing, SEO, blogging, all the tech and things that go behind this. And most e-commerce people are coming at it from a perspective of, I have this really cool product that I want to sell, and I'm having a hard time selling it. And who I, by the way, I'm always been jealous of in the e-commerce space is I've never been able to come up with anything that's as unique and amazing as a lot of other e-commerce owners. But I realized that I had a talent pretty early on in terms of my technical prowess coming into this space, and that was when I decided to start Ecom Crew. I was becoming a pretty prominent member in e-commerce field community. I had been asked to speak there and a bunch of other things, and I realized that what I was doing was valuable to other people. And that's why we started the podcast and the blog. And we were blogging about once a week and podcasting once a week. And over time, what ended up happening from the podcast is talking. So when I started the podcast, number one, first and foremost, I was like, what, there's already a bunch of other podcasts out here. There's already a bunch of people doing this. Like, why should I do this? And my thought process was like, well, I'm just going to be an open book. I'm going to talk about everything that no one else talks about. I'm going to talk about exact numbers that I'm selling, the exact products I'm selling, how I'm doing it, just be a complete open book, because I felt like I was just financially secure enough in what I was doing that I didn't really care if someone else wanted to copy me. And I also was at a point where I realized that I was never going to sell all the world's gel packs or gel pens, whatever, right? So it's just like, who cares? And so if someone really wants to go copy me, verbatim, then let them go do it. And so that's what I did. And just started podcasting and blogging with no expectation whatsoever of what would come out of it. And what came out of it in reality was the ability to help a lot of people, which was really freaking cool. And you start going to conferences and people like run up to you and like give you these huge hugs and high fives because you've really helped them. And that becomes really infectious to want to keep doing it. On a personal level, it's opened up the door to all sorts of people that I've met. I mean, people like you, this conversation would never be happening if it weren't for Ecom Crew. Mm-hmm. And there's dozens and maybe even hundreds at this point, hundreds of people at this point that fall into that category. I mean, I feel like I know every thought leader in this space on a personal level because I go speak at their events, or I've been on their podcast, or I've come to run their masterminds or whatever it is, because I've always taken this selfless approach of I'm always out there, and everybody kind of knows that. Maybe it allows me to get taken advantage of a little bit, but so be it, whatever. And it's at a point where I can pick up the phone and talk to anybody in the industry about anything, and that's amazing. I mean, like the ability to be around these people, and like how they've also enriched my life and helped take me to the next level, because these are really smart people. That are running 7-8 figure businesses that I've been able to hang out with and learn from, even by osmosis. I'll take it. So. And it's also helped me overcome the fear of public speaking. I mean, before I started doing this, you could have paid me $1 million and I would have said no to go.
Totally, man.
Yeah, I'm almost terrified of it. But I've gone and done that now, and now it's something I look forward to. And so, I mean, there's a lot of things that have come out of it. And yes, I mean, we've been talking about everything, every step of the way, from the ice wraps journey to Color It to our other brand, Wild Baby and Tactical, and just being really honest about what's working and what's not working. I think another thing that makes us unique is I talk about the stupid crap that I do that loses tons of money. No one ever talks about that.
Oh, I know, right? Or how hard all this stuff actually is.
Or how hard it is.
If I see another quick get rich quick tactic or some sort of clickbait, I'm so over it because everybody makes it seem so easy, and it's just
absolutely. You will never hear me say that on our podcast. In fact, we do whole episodes about how hard this is. And if you aren't prepared for the long haul, then go do something else. This is not the thing for you. It's still a really rewarding, amazing industry and niche, and I wouldn't have it any other way, but it's not for everyone. It's not easy. And this is not something that you will hear any other podcaster talk about typically, because and I get it, they're all my friends too. Like I don't look down on them for doing this, because this is their business. But I wanted to be different. And that was, the approach that I took.
I think being real these days, I mean, people are yearning for it so much that they gravitate for it. And again, value it'll spiral upwards. I'm curious, Mike, as you have gone and, you've been growing these and the tough challenges that you talk about, when you think about some, there's two different types of listeners here. There's, some people that are potentially going to get into e-commerce as like building the value of their company. I've got a friend in he's actually now in Rhodium, but he, rubber stamp manufacturer. And then he has just been getting, absolutely blazing a trail in e-commerce. So, again, there's kind of the merging, I think, of manufacture, kind of like what you did, right? You're like manufacturing or being a distributor, but you're also doing e-commerce. So I think there's this whole blend that's happening, which is why I kind of have a mixed audience. But, what are the things that, as you have, grown and sold some of these companies, that have provided really good value while you're running the business and also, on the exit? Because I think, the layer of context behind that question, Mike, is that a lot of people do they not only in the marketing is to get, the quick hits, but that actually impacts the overall value of the company too, right? Which is like, okay, we have to invest for the long term. So what are some of the challenges or things that you've seen that you've done that has impacted the increasing value on the exit?
Yeah, I mean, we've taken the same approach with our e-commerce companies as we have with Ecom Crew, which is, just to give a bunch of value first and enrich the community as much as we can, and know that if and when people are ready, they'll buy, right? So I mean, we did the same thing in the coloring space, where first things first, we went and make the best product physically. But we went and thought through all the attributes of a coloring book and gel pens and markers that needed to be improved to make the best product. So when people did make the decision to buy, that they would want to tell others about it because it was the best that they had ever used. So I think that you got to start there. But once we kind of got over that hump, I mean, it was, let's give away a bunch of free drawings and free plus shipping offers and talk about our community and what they're sending in more than we talk about ourselves, and all these different types of things, and build an email list and a Facebook Messenger subscriber list, and just a raging group of fans that makes it easy at that point to sell to. So, typically people, and again, I get it. If you gotta pay the bills today, you're going to come at it from a different approach. But our approach to it was, we want to build something that's like long-term and lasting and defensible here, and not just sell as many widgets as we can today and then sell as many widgets as we can tomorrow. But the concept was, from a pretty early standpoint, of we know that will come because we already have a good product and it's different than everything else out there. And so that's what we did. We provided as much value to the community as we possibly could. And the end result was, yes, it took a little bit longer to ramp up sales, but the end result was we sold more than we would have if we just took the thinking about today approach. And every product that we launched seemingly became easier and easier to generate sales for, because each time we had more and more fans, more and more customers. So, I mean, the last 18 months that we ran the business, every product that we launched on Amazon became a new number one bestseller without having to do any of the black hat tactics that people talk about, super URLs and coupons. And I mean, people search for your list and your item and go to like the 9th page and find it and click on it and buy it and all this other crap that's out there being talked about. I know how to do it all, but those people are all going to have a really bad day one day. They're going to wake up and realize that their business is gone.
Yep.
The boom hammer will come, and so instead of constantly chasing that, it was constantly chasing, how do we build a bigger and better brand? And how do we take care of our customers to a point where they'll go lay down in traffic for us? And that's what we did. That's what we focused on. So ultimately, when we went to sell the business, even though it was a 7-figure deal and we wanted all cash, we were under LOI in less than a month with multiple offers because of all these attributes. Because buyers aren't stupid either. I mean, they can identify what makes a business like this unique. And because of that, it was very easy to sell.
So let's layer on one of your earlier comments about when you had, opened up a new facility and you realized that you were all of a sudden in this whirlwind again. That obviously, what was a triggering event behind that? Because, I can tell that you really love being able to have that kind of impact and doing the right thing. So what led up to, like what were kind of some of the compounding variables? And then that led up to that triggering event? And then what was the process after that going and going to sell?
Yeah. So when you say the triggering event, you mean like what made me get the office, or what made me want to get out of the office?
No, go more get out, because I think growing is just an entrepreneur's way. But like especially when you're loving it and you're impacting people's lives and you're doing it for the right reasons, you kind of got. I can see that you're proud of it, right? Versus all of a sudden being burnt out in the poker industry. But what was it at home? Is it in your life? Is it what happened to the point where you said, okay, this is too much again?
Yeah. I'm not a 9 to 5 guy. I'm a hard worker, but I also kind of like have ADD, and it's hard for me to like come in from 9 to 5 and just focus at the same level all day. And I don't do well in the same environment, like continuously. I like kind of bouncing around environments. And I really realized how much that meant to me through a number of the years in the poker industry. When we lived in Costa Rica for 3 years. We lived in the Cayman Islands for a year. Then I came back and RV'd for a couple of years, and we were just constantly, and we did a lot of traveling. We're moving around and just in different environments. And the times that I was the most miserable in both the poker time and the time that during e-commerce was the years that it became a 9 to 5 thing, because you're coming into an office, you have employees that are there, and you have to kind of lead by example, and you're kind of forced into this 9 to 5 mode when you're asking them to be there, even though you go home and work late hours and you go home and work on the weekends, and there is no real vacation. You're constantly having to check everything. Employees don't really understand that. And so that became difficult when we did open up the office here and having to deal with that. And it became even worse when we started dealing with China. And then we also opened an office in the Philippines. And the reason that made it worse is because now we were basically living on this 24/7 clock, working in an office that was 9 to 5, and the employees, like, I think, had a hard time understanding that that we were doing all this other work outside of this building, even though we were asking them to kind of work in that environment. And so, I've been told that some of this is in my own head. It's that I'm the boss; I should be able to do whatever the hell I want. But at the same time, other people agree and understand that because we've all been. I mean, I've been an employee. I can't say we've all been employees, but I've definitely been an employee. And I know what other people were saying about the CEO at the company that I worked at when he would like go golfing or play tennis or whatever. And I never thought that way. My feeling always was like, you're paying me to do this job. I can give two shits with. Sorry, I probably shouldn't curse on the podcast.
No, you're good, man.
Two craps what you go do in your life. It's not my responsibility. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to do the best job I possibly can because you're paying me. But not everyone thinks that way. There was a lot of rumbling of people like, oh man, like, John was out playing tennis for 4 hours a day. It must be nice, but like not thinking about all the work that he might have put in to get to the point that he was at, and certainly all the money he was paying to have these employees that were supposed to be doing the job that they were supposed to be doing. And who knows like how much stuff that he did at home or in the weekends, and the sacrifices he had to make to get to that point. And so I heard a lot of that when I was in those other environments, and it was always a struggle for me. So maybe some of it again is in my own head. Maybe I need to be hire better employees or different types of people or whatever. But it became like a noose around me, having to constantly be in that office environment, when the reality is that I'm less productive and less happy and less everything that's negative in that environment, versus being in an environment where I'm just kind of not tied to that and I can do what I want. And that's what we all get in entrepreneurship to begin with for, right? Is that independence.
Totally.
And then you realize one day you wake up and you don't have that any longer, and you bought yourself a job. And,
man, so many people have been there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure lots of people can relate. And that was certainly, where we got to. And that was why we started making changes. You can't change overnight, but, again, because I'm older and had been through it before, I was able to identify some of that and cut it off before it became, a bigger problem.
So then, Mike, one of the things that I see, and I'm curious, and I know we don't have enough time to get into a ton of the tactics of it, but of the actual exit. But one of the things that I see so many times, and it's so unfortunate. I mean, I think people get that, and like, it's this mental light switch, man, for entrepreneurs. Where it's like, boom, all right, I'm upset and I'm unhappy, and I have to change. I have to change all this immediately, and it, like, I just see it happen like that fast. But then, therefore, you did a lot of value building and value creation, because you had a little bit different perspective on this whole growth on this last venture. But that happens, and then all of a sudden they've got to sell, and they realize that it's they didn't do a bunch of stuff correctly, and so it's like a fire sale to get out of that noose that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So outside of that, what was the process? I mean, you can kind of do a couple skimming of the different milestones, but how long did it take for you to like say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm planning on listing it. Did you hire a broker, surround yourself with a team of advisors, and how did that all work?
Yeah. Speaking first to that news thing, I mean, that's definitely the situation that I found myself in. And it happens very quickly. And it's not the first time that it's happened. And sometimes it's hard to see it coming. It's just like, I think you kind of wake up one morning and just like, man, I got to
F this, I'm out.
F this. And almost like in a panic situation to do something about it. It wasn't quite to that extreme because I had been here before. So like, I was like, you know what, I got to do something about this within the next year. And then mentally putting a clock on it like that for me, like really helped get through the situation, because now it was no longer like, I got to do something about it this month. It's just like, I know what the end game is going to be. And I know exactly what it feels like because I've been here before. That helped a lot. So knowing that I want to make all these changes over the next year, and I know that I can get there, helped a lot. So this was last summer. And that's when I did hire or contacted Joe. I didn't formally hire him yet, but I contacted him. We had a discussion about potentially selling the whole business, selling a part of the business, and just coming up with a plan that made the most sense. And we ultimately settled on selling one of the brands, which was Color It, and taking the next 6 months to just get all of our stuff in order to get the best value for our business, which was going to mean not developing new products and just being cognizant and more cautious of how we were spending our money, not doing anything unethical that would ultimately, value the business at something that it really wasn't worth, because there's a lot of squirrely things you can do.
I'm trying new random new things.
Exactly. You just put the brakes on dumb stuff and went through and spent a few minutes looking at our credit card bill and canceling the SaaS app that I hadn't used in 24 months. Just basic stuff like this. And the net result was that the company grew 45% year over year, and both top line and bottom line. And actually, the bottom line grew quicker. I forgot the exact percentage, but the bottom line grew quicker than the top line because we did some better things to it, and it just made it really presentable to people that were looking at making a purchase. And there's still lots of money out there looking to buy businesses like this, especially like this. So yeah, I mean, it was basically a 6-month timeline from when we decided to sell to when we put it up, and then from when we put it up for sale. It was just a matter of weeks before we had multiple offers and we're under LOI. And from the day that we were under LOI till we closed was 2 months to the day. And we're recording this about 2 months to the day from when we closed on that transaction. And we're in the process of shutting down the warehouse and the office here, so we don't have to be in that 9 to 5 thing past this summer, basically. And it's worked out the way that we wanted, and it feels good. And also learning from previous examples, it isn't a matter of getting rid of everything and just trying to retire, making sure there's still stuff in my life that keeps me intellectually stimulated, that I enjoy, but also can do it in a way that that I don't get burned out, and that it also, it's just everything's a more positive experience. And so far so good.
So what are the things that you're doing that as you're decompressing and looking at this for, what would it be, the third time now? Or of the roller up and down of the roller coaster.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Mike, that is like gonna, maybe you're just still, decompressing or digesting, but like to balance the ADD, because I can relate, right? Where like I love stimuli from all over places, from people to speaking to making money, all these different things, right? How are you going to balance that and your identity and your family, personal life? I mean, is there things that you're digesting or things that you're doing, or are you still in the search?
I feel like I have this figured out, but let's do a follow-up in 6 or 12 months, and we'll see like how these predictions come to fruition. So here's what I have in my head that I think that solves all of these things. So I've also read the book, The One Thing. You're talking about books. I think that, and really going to work on focusing on one thing, which is going to be an e-commerce business, instead of 12, that I have a personal interest and passion in. I think I have this figured out, and I think that it'll be fun to maybe do a recap of this in 6 or 12 months after, because not everything always plays out the way that you expect it to. But the way that I'm handling this is, number one, we're talking about books here. I read the book, The One Thing, and it's really helped me realize just I've got way too much crap going on in my life. And I always use the saying, if you chase two rabbits, both will get away. I'm always saying this, always giving this advice, but then not following it myself.
Oh man, I agree.
So going to really focus on making sure that is not a thing moving forward. So the one thing for me will be running an e-commerce business, not multiple e-commerce businesses, and then blogging and podcasting about that with Ecom Crew. So the goal over the next year or two is to start shutting off these other e-commerce businesses. I have too many, and get down to one. And the one that I'm going to do will be starting from scratch and documenting that in a even better way than we ever have with Ecom Crew, being even more out there than we ever have been. But it being a business that I have a personal, passionate interest about, not just about the money part. So that's the one thing part. The other part is, I have this passion for traveling and being in different places. And so marrying, making sure that I'm disconnected and getting out there, but not getting bored. We did this thing that we started earlier this year that's been incredible, called the Ecom Crew Roadshow. And I started this for pretty selfish reasons, because the thing that I love is traveling. So this allows me to take an RV and drive around the country and see different parts of the country. But it also allows me to be like intellectually stimulated and work with other entrepreneurs at their facility and help them. And the thing that's really cool about this is it helps with this craving of like doing something new and these new ideas, and the other things are always bouncing in my head because I can just do it with someone else. And it kind of satisfies that appetite that I have for that, and allows me to stay on focus, but it also helps other people and does that other stuff I was talking about. So I've tried to figure out this way to marry all these different things that make me unique and weird into my life moving forward. And hopefully it will play out the way that I want it to. It's hard to predict the future with any degree of certainty, but as you get older, you learn things about life and yourself and all these different things. And I think that this is a way to make all those things come together. And I'm excited for what's to come.
I think you've definitely set yourself up for success with the highest probability of being happy, which is super cool, man. I mean, it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of bumps and bruises to get there.
Yeah. I mean, because like the last time, I sold and tried to retire, but then I was bored. So like, how do you prevent that? But like also now I'm burnt out and like, because I've been working too hard. So there's got to be some happy medium. And this is the way to have the happy medium, to take the time off, to take time for myself, to do the things that are important to me. And I feel like I need to do those things because I'm at a point where I've gotten. This is what success is about. You got to go do the stuff that makes you happy, that's important. But at the same time, like preventing the balance from getting out of whack, you have that other component. So this is a way to have the best of both worlds and
have some purpose, right? I mean, like
there's some purpose.
It's cool, and I know you got a bolt, but I'll leave it with that. There's two things that I said because I've interviewed people, Mike, where they've netted $100 million and they're just miserable, and so this regardless of the zeros, I think this is a common situation that comes up, and I say, I've kind of boiled it down from all the hundreds of interviews. Is like you can wake up outside of the financial success, because like you have said, I think the financial success comes from giving value back. But if you can wake up and answer two questions, one is like, what are the most interesting problems that are passionate to you? If you can solve those problems, what are the most interesting problems? And then the second question is, who do you want to do that with? Because if you're solving really cool problems and the people suck, that sucks. You're around really cool people, but it's not a cool problem, that also sucks. And so like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if it's too simple, but it seems to have a good theme that's woven between a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. And another thing that I always talk about is, once you get to a certain level, there's lots of studies out there about this. That number is somewhere between 80,000 a year and 150,000 a year, depending on where you live. Most of the problems that you have past that point, you've made for yourself.
Totally.
Right. I mean, think about it. It's like all the things that like I complain about in my life, or the things I'm upset about. Like I've made these problems for myself. Like these are manufactured problems that I can easily not have in my life if I didn't put myself in that position.
Yeah.
I don't worry about where my food's coming from, where my room and board's coming from. the basic needs that you have in life. And so everything past that, you make this stuff up. And
why Warren Buffett said he'll never buy a boat ever.
Right. Well, I've already been through that too. So it's just like, it's easy to shed that stuff and get rid of it if you take a different approach. And, these are things that I'm learning the hard way, but yeah, I mean, it's, and you mentioned the guy with $100 million that was miserable. I mean, I totally can understand that. I mean, it can be a lonely world there. Like you quickly, lose touch in reality with your other friends, right? Like you got $100 million and you're living a totally different life. And the friends that you have that are making $50K a year, being a school teacher or bartender or whatever, it's like hard to relate to them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, that I don't like that. I want to make sure that I stay grounded to the people that I grew up with that were, always there for me. And,
we specifically need a purpose, man. Like it's like literally what keeps us going. I mean,
exactly.
I know you got to run, man. So I want to be respectful of your time, and I've already gone over. So I appreciate it so much, Mike. This has been an absolute blast. You've been super authentic and an open book, like you said you would. Best way for the listeners to get in touch with you would be what?
Yeah, I mean, check out the podcast, Ecom Crew, ECOMCREW, or ecomcrew.com. Or if you want to reach out, support@ecomcrew.com. Those are all Ecom Crew things. And that's really the best way to get a hold of me these days. And if you got any questions, I'm happy to answer best that I can.
Mike, it's been a blast, man. I appreciate it so much.
Of course. Thank you.